Hey there, superstars. Dolly Rae Star here to remind you that the map is not the territory, the menu is not the meal. And so, on that subject, fancy coming on a bit of an adventure through the implications of the inaccuracy of all of our maps and have some fun seeing what we discover. First of all, just to say, I'm kind of joyfully in debt to Anton Wilson for more or less everything in this video. I actually started making this as a thing for Maybe Day, which was last month. It was 50 years since his potential communications with aliens from Sirius. And every year on that day, there's a kind of thing celebrating his work and celebrating the maybes that can bring into our lives and exploring them and playing with them. So yeah, originally I was going to do this for that, but it didn't quite work out that way. Hopefully it's still of interest in any case. So yeah, let's dive into it. One of the main reasons for the name of this channel, and a real sort of fascination of mine, I guess, and yeah, I guess the key point of what we're talking about here is it kind of seems really straightforward actually, but it's quite profound to really think about it and notice it and remember it. And that is that no map, no matter how useful it might be or close to certain aspects of the area it's talking about, can ever actually give you all the information that is in that actual space. So it's things like you can have a map of a landscape, but it's never going to tell you about all of the biodiversity in that landscape, all of the different plants and creatures that are living there, the texture of the soil, what it feels like to walk over it, you know, the crunch of it under your feet, what it feels like to have bare feet there, you know, or just all those details of life, and the way that is quite representative of how our more conceptual models can end up missing all sorts of things about what they're describing. And sometimes those things don't matter in the context, but sometimes actually we end up missing things that are really relevant. And also, if we only ever go off the maps, if we think of the maps as somehow realer than the actual experience and you know, reality in the sense of living and experiencing those things and really like embodying them, then we just basically miss out on more or less everything that is going on. So yeah, it's a bit like, whoa. You know, if no map, if no concept can actually really ever be accurate, then what do we actually know? And that's kind of, in some ways, maybe one of the best things about kind of getting on board with a thing like this, is realising that in a certain sense, well, yeah, nothing. But in some ways, there are some things we can know. We can know what the experience is when we tune into it. We can know what comes through our senses of a situation, a place, a experience of being a certain way, of living through certain things. But obviously, then we come across the thing of that is our perception. And perhaps somebody else's perception and experience of that situation would be quite a different thing. So yeah, maps can never capture the full terrain without being the full terrain. And it can be quite interesting to really go into depth with this in a few ways of maybe like things that you're aware of a system of, but also aware of the feeling of. You know, some things that spring to mind for me are like, say, thinking about the chakra system of kind of energy through the body, and then thinking about the actual sensations of processing energy in the body when doing kind of body work like yoga or qigong, or, you know, certainly with radical undoing. And also just if you're tuned into it, going about your day, how does that kind of a processing in the body feel compared to, you know, well, really any system of it, and considering the similarities and the differences. Or another more scientific one might be thinking about the kind of complexity of all the different lived experiences of so many different creatures, and, you know, all their interrelations in a particular environment, versus looking at a kind of system of biology and evolution, and how those creatures interrelate within that system, as opposed to the kind of complexities of how they all interrelate within their own experience, or within your actual observation of that, even just, you know, for a brief time, say watching a little patch of woodland or something like that. Or another one that's more sort of personal experience, again, more direct personal experience, might be thinking about the kind of conceptual ideas of that we have, you know, through various models even, of what dreams are, what they might do for our brains and bodies, and, you know, how they might operate within our lives versus the actual experience of dreaming. And maybe, you know, if you've ever experienced this, recording dreams, and especially dream sharing, and the things that can come up between people when you're collectively sharing dreams in a group, that kind of thing. So yeah, just kind of exploring those 2 points in those kind of instances. There might be other things that spring to mind that might be more relevant for you. It can be kind of a fun little thing to do and explore, and just see what comes up through doing that. And one of the dangers perhaps of really taking our own experience as being right in some way beyond our own, you know, our own experience, and that being what it is, superimposing that onto other people or other situations, can be that it can end up getting into a kind of form of rightism, which is another thing that Anton talked about. And that's also something that can happen with conceptual stuff for sure, you know, where you get kind of really into like a sense of a moral right and wrong, and that being just the kind of be all and end all and what have you. But I've also seen it happen definitely with people when they kind of get really deep into really taking their senses as what's read, and not remembering to consider that perhaps other people, other organisms, you know, perhaps it's best to assume, even if we can't know it for sure, that they are also conscious processes with that same kind of consciousness looking out of their eyes, but maybe having completely different experiences of the same things, and the implications of that. You know, we're all looking through different eyes with different experiences behind us, different systems in our, you know, and programs in our kind of perception, affecting everything about how we perceive the world. And disentangling that, even when we become very adept at really focusing on the sense data, remembering that what that sense data tells us about what's going on conceptually will still be fed through all of those mechanisms, you know, all of our different perceptions. I was interested to see recently that Christopher Hyatt once described that as the root of all human drama. I couldn't find the exact quote again, but yeah, that was fascinating to me, particularly. Yeah, it's remembering these kind of things, even when we go through so many exercises and processes, remembering to take that step back and go, well, this is my perception. Yeah, and Anton also talked about rightism as the root of all human conflicts. I don't know whether either of those things are true as the root of all of it, but it does seem like quite an interesting perspective to take, and an interesting kind of motivatory factor to keep reminding oneself, going through different exercises and processes, and also just doing so on an intellectual level. Okay, you know, this is my perception, and that person over there almost certainly has a completely different perception of this that is as real, and all of these different systems all doing that, and isn't that fascinating? And I found that kind of particularly a useful thing to keep going over in different ways over the years, as someone who used to be quite afflicted by rightism myself in some ways. I don't know if other people can relate to that. So yeah, if you're interested in that, a really great exercise to play around with, actually like really direct, quite hardcore exercise that I heard about through Robert Anton Wilson, is E prime. And that means speaking and writing in a way that doesn't use the verb to be at all. So this isn't something that I've ever actually kind of done to its full extent, but it's something that I've made an effort to keep in mind, play with in my language, both written and spoken. And even just doing that, I find to be something that really, has been quite sort of transformative in my experience. And yeah, you can look it up online, see how far you want to go with it, have a play around. In a similar vein, I'm going to post a little quote up here that I've been playing around with again in my head the last few months. Comes back up every now and again, quite a fun one to sort of pass through every once in a while. And yeah, in 2023, it doesn't really feel like you could do an exploration of this kind of thing without mentioning, some very clear kind of pitfalls, stuff around the whole kind of post-truth, not listening to experts, all that kind of nonsense. You can see my view of it from that, I suppose. But that's fine with me. You can take that or leave it. But yeah, I think the thing that's interesting for me is that actually a lot of those kind of people that expose those kind of views will often actually have massive blind spots within those kind of views. They often actually really are very rightist about a lot of things, and they'll back those up with various different models. But basically they're just committed to the idea that that is something that's right, and they might be saying, oh, this other thing, isn't right because we can't say what's right and what's wrong. But actually, yeah, I think if you look at it a bit harder, and for me, that leads to the suggestion that perhaps the best way to deal with these kind of things is kind of ironically to stick at it, to stay open, stay curious, stay exploring, and also to allow oneself to build models that do involve kindness and compassion and so on, but just allow them also to be shaken, to be moved around, to be changed, be willing to totally shift it up if necessary, but keep a genuinely exploratory, open mind about what that is and what it is that is causing you to believe it to be necessary, I suppose. Pass it through a whole system that's as grounded as possible. Be responsive rather than reactive. All of that kind of thing. And in case it isn't clear, the reason for the kindness and compassion thing is quite evidently, as far as I can see, what I was talking about before, which is this situation of all of these different systems of awareness, these different sensory systems experiencing consciousness from their own perception and their own places. And if there's even a slightest possibility that that's the truth, and it would seem to me that the data, the experiential thing suggests that it's almost certainly true, wouldn't we want to be freaking considerate to that? Wouldn't we want to be starting from our own place but with care for all of these other experiences that are occurring, wouldn't we want to do that whilst holding this maybe to everything, giving the complexity and beauty of this thing that we're a living, breathing, moving part of its due, in always holding its mystery and our lack of full understanding of it as the kind of core principle of what's going on. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's been a little bit more of a ramble than I probably probably planned for it to be, but I hope it's useful, and I hope there's a few little exercises in there that you can try out if you'd like to. And yeah, if you do any of that, or even if you don't, just kind of allowing this to kind of drift through your awareness or previous experiences of it, you know, definitely let me know if this kind of thing has changed things for you. I know it has in my life. You know, have you also found yourself less inclined to argue pointlessly with people on the internet? Have you found yourself more able to consider things that contradict each other, that don't logically seem possible to be both be true at once, to perhaps be true at once, and to hold that lightly and see what emerges from that? Have you had some interesting things emerge from that kind of thing? And yeah, if you'd like to share any of that in the comments, please do. Also, please give the video a like if you found it interesting, and yeah, subscribe if you'd like to explore this kind of thing further and in some kind of practical exercise ways. Check out some of the other videos. There's loads of really great kind of physical exercises and different ways of exploring this kind of thing through our own bodies on this channel, and there's going to be more to come. So yeah, subscribe for that and let me know how you get on, and loads of love, superstars. Bye.